This is the Coach's Wife Life podcast. I'm Kristen Eargle, your host, a former TV sports reporter and fellow college football coach's wife. I'll go one-on-one with the strong women who are the backbone of college athletics and athletics of all levels. And now, Coach's Wife Life.
This podcast is brought to you by Ruler of Hope. Ruler of Hope is a nonprofit that supports medically fragile children. If you'd like to make a tax-deductible donation, you can use Venmo at Ruler-Hope or online at rulerofhope.org.
Hey there, I'm Kristen Eargle, and we have an exciting podcast ahead. But first I want to talk about something we all know way too much about, moving. Just the thought of that can bring an unsettling emotion. Well, I found a team that can take that load off your plate. It's D1 Relocation. This group can do it all. They can organize your move, coordinate with a moving company, and a trusted real estate agent. They can actually vet key household partners such as schools, insurance agents, physicians in the area. They can even help set up your Wi-Fi and water. It's incredible. So I've come to know this team, which is actually founded by a coach's wife. I think you should check it out, whether you're looking to move now or in the future. It's d1relocation.com. Now on to our awesome podcast. Well, it is my honor to bring Amanda Klanderman on the podcast. Amanda is the wife of Joe Klanderman, defensive coordinator at Kansas State. Thank you for being a part of us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kristen.
Well, you have an incredible coaching journey that I'm so excited to talk to you about. Let's talk 12 years at Minnesota State, 5 years at North Dakota State, 4 national titles in those years. Now 5 years at K-State with a Big 12 title. Okay, so give us insider. I've honestly watched your program from afar, North Carolina State, and what you guys did at Kansas State as well. Having coached at Kansas, not too far from me. But talk me through it. Like, give us insight. What's he all about? What's your coach like? What makes him good at his job?
He's the most intelligent man. I always say that all my kids get their smarts from their dad. But he knows ball. Like, he just knows the game. He understands it like nobody else I've ever met. And he's able to explain it to even me and his players and get the point across. He can teach this stuff. He actually went to school. Like, when we were in school, he was majoring to be a history teacher, excuse me. And so he knows how to teach. He knows how to get the point across. He knows his stuff.
I think being a teacher is a big deal that people actually don't talk about, because it's one thing, hey, just to get someone in, you can recruit. Yes, you have to have great players right now, but to mold them and to get them to go on. There's a lot of times that we don't see the teaching aspect anymore. I was interested to hear you talk about that. Okay, so where did you grow up? Did you ever envision this life in Manhattan, Kansas?
No, I am a small town Southern Minnesota girl, and less than 2,000 people, did not even have a clue that, like, what coaching was about, what anything. I mean, besides my high school track coach, I'm like, I didn't know anything. I didn't even go to a college sporting event until I was a freshman in college. So none of this was even close to being on my radar at all.
Okay, so how did y'all meet?
So we both were athletes at Minnesota State. He played football. I ran track 1 year, only 1 year, because I ended up graduating college in 2.5 years. So again, backstory, small town, not a ton of options. So I went to college half of my senior year. So the first, like the mornings, I went to college, and then I came back and I did high school in the afternoon so I could still run cross country and track. And so by the time I graduated high school, I was a sophomore in college for credit wise.
Oh my goodness.
So I ended up graduating with my 4-year degree in 2.5. So I only ran 1 year of track, but that's how we met, because athletes in the athletic department, it's not just one team. You get to know everybody. You're all in the same area, especially at a smaller school. You see everybody. So mutual friends, and we just hit it off.
Okay, so fast forward to now. You've been married for how many years? Tell me about your kids.
All right. So we have been married. We're going on 21 years. It'll be 21 this July. And we have 4 kids, which is crazy to think that they're old now. Our oldest is going to be 20. I don't know how that happened. She is actually a sophomore at UNL, University of Nebraska at Lincoln. And we raised our kids in sports. So she's actually going into sports journalism and broadcasting.
There you go.
She loves it. So I might have to hook you guys up and you can give her
For sure. Let me know.
And then our other daughter is in her last few months of high school. So she is a senior. She's going to graduate here soon. I think right now, it all changes, but right now it's on industrial design. And she is an amazingly talented artist. Like she can do just about anything. It's very cool. And then we have 2 boys who just rule the roost. They're in 9th grade and 7th grade, and sports are life, football especially, but it's wonderful. Like I absolutely adore being a mom. I couldn't imagine anything else.
And then do you work right now?
So currently I don't. So we are about 8.5 hours away from all family. So when we moved to Manhattan, I never went back to work. I was a personal trainer prior to moving here. And then prior to kids, I actually worked with at-risk youth. So I've done alternative schools. I've actually did internships in women prisons. And so I did a lot of that stuff. But moving here, being away from family, first and foremost was my kids.
Definitely. And I know you're in that car back and forth and practices.
Always.
And I do want to ask you more later on about like approaching sports with your kids, with your husband in the profession. I'm curious, what would you say? Not every day you're winning 4 national titles.
Right.
So there had to have been some moments where it was really tough. Could you identify some moments that you really would say, they're some of the toughest we've had as a coaching family, and what do you guys rely on to get through that?
Oh gosh, there's always the games. There's always the moments where you're just like, we should have had it. That, like, how did we lose that? I remember our youngest, his birthday is in November, and of course it's during football season. So there was one birthday that we had a game and we should have won it. And we lost. And it actually turned out to be the last game that my husband coached at Minnesota State Mankato, because he ended up going to North Dakota State after that. So again, silver lining, you have the bad, but another door opens. And it's life. It's lessons. It's as hard as it is. I think my husband takes things way easier than I do. I am way more attached, way more emotional to the highs and lows. So it's finding that balance and helping the kids understand that balance. It's an interesting take. As they get older, I think it's a little bit easier. When they're younger, it's really young, they're kind of aloof to it all.
Right.
So kids are a great distraction. If you lose a game, have a bad day, kids are great. As they get older, they start to understand it a little bit more. And it's life.
Yeah, it is. I do think it's harder, especially with the moving, the older they get. I didn't realize it until they started getting older. I'm like, oh, that's a little bit harder to move the kids around. And there's challenges there. I guess when I was looking over where you've been Division II, FCS, and Power 5 Division I. I love that story. I love the fact that you've worked your way up, and each level has its benefits and things as well. Not that you had to move up to find success or that value success, but how beneficial have you found it to have coached different levels of football?
Oh, it's life-changing. I wish everybody could have that experience. I wish that everybody could start from the bottom and work your way up. You find that understanding. You learn the lessons. I mean, when my husband was a GA, I remember sleeping on the floor while he broke down film and then driving him, because yes, that dates me, driving to actually physically exchange the film.
Change the film.
It wasn't digital way back then.
Right.
But you find those times. It's amazing what you do. And starting from the bottom, you got nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, you make nothing. It's very minimal. You just claw for whatever you can get. But being at D2, it was so amazing having our kids at a D2 school. It's family. Like, Minnesota State was amazing. Our kids, I mean, I would stroll the stroller in, I would go up to the stands, and then I'd hand the stroller over the rail, and they put it underneath the bench on the sidelines.
Right.
Like, it was family. It wasn't, it's not all this high-tech security, all, clear bag, we had all the things, and my kids could run around. So that was awesome. That was a great way to start. And then, you just move up, and each level has pros and cons. Each level have different expectations, and I'm grateful for it all. I hate to see people who don't get to experience that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just the appreciation of being grateful for where you are, no matter what that is. It just deepens when you've had something to compare it to. Definitely. I'm curious what are some of the things that I mentioned earlier I wanted to talk about, but your kids are older, and then, what have you made a priority in raising them since, now he's at this level and things are a little bit different, I would imagine. What's that experience been like for you?
It's hard. It's hard raising kids, being a coach's family. Lots of reasons. Moving, we haven't moved a lot, but moving a couple times is difficult, especially at the ages. But that's part of the reason why I never went back to work. I choose to be with my kids. When we had kids, we knew we wanted to raise them. We didn't want to have kids and send them off to daycare all day and only get the couple hours with them. I'm there. Like, as much as they want me there or may not want me there, I'm there. I'm at all their events. I'm videoing everything. I'm present. My husband tries to be as much as he can. And, it's one of those things, it's quality over quantity. When he can be home and with the kids, he is 110% there. And it's great. But
what would you say you've made a priority in your life? I think it's really hard. I mean, you obviously enjoy being a mom and being able to stay home, but that is hard too. Like, I've done all. I've done a full-time working outside the home. I'm full-time working inside the home right now. I've done part-time, and I realized there's no easy way to raise children. There's different things. So for you, how have you found that balance? What works for you?
I'm independent, and I think you have to be as a coach's wife. You have to just get stuff done. So it doesn't matter what it is, it's got to get done. If the dishwasher breaks, I got to fix it. I don't like to pay for somebody to do something that I can do myself. So it's prioritizing what needs to be done and getting it done. It doesn't matter if it is the dishes or laundry or carpool, doctor's appointments. You just do it, and you make it work.
Yeah. You're living pretty far from family now. How often do you kind of get to go back and see them or make sure they're part of your life? I think the hardest part for me is when there's like Grandparents' Day and nobody's showing up, when you try. How do you get through that?
It's hard. It is really hard. My boys and I took a real super quick trip up to Minnesota to see family a couple weeks ago because my niece she was born in August and we hadn't met her yet. Yeah. And so we were able to sneak up there for a day, basically. You drive up there, you spend the day, you drive back. But we do our best. We're very fortunate that our parents are capable of driving down here, taking time off. And speaking of Grandparents' Day, we had all the grandparents here for the weekend of Grandparents' Day. This was
Nice.
totally crazy how it happened, but all of them were here. They were able to take in some football games, and so that was fun. That's nice to be able to do that. I wish it was a little bit closer. I do miss being able to be there as much. We try to stay in touch with phone calls, text messages, and that stuff, but actually physically seeing each other, it gets hard. Sometimes there's stretches of a month or two.
Now, I know you mentioned you haven't moved a ton because you've had long stretches of time places, but you did move when your children are a little bit older. So practically, when did it work for you? Did you move after the school year or spring break? What worked for you?
So we've actually done both. So our first move from Mankato to Fargo, we waited until the kids were done with school. Joe, my husband, went up there in January, and then we moved like June. Yeah. So it was a good 5 months or so that we were apart. And that's hard, especially with little kids. Yeah. Because our youngest was 2 at the time. And it's 2 or 3, and that's hard. So we did the best we could. Tried to see each other on weekends when we could, doing some FaceTime, but it's good and bad. Like, the kids were able to finish out the school, the elementary part, and then move. And they were able to meet people in the summer. But when we moved to Manhattan, we moved right away. So we were in Manhattan in the middle of February. So Joe got the job in January, or moved down here in January, and we were middle of February, we were here. Again, good and bad that, you have to leave your friends, but it worked that they could start school. They could meet people. They could get into some sports before the summer hit, especially at the ages that my kids were at, because our oldest was in 9th grade. So in the middle of 9th grade for a girl is hard to move.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I mean, we've done them both. If it ever happens again, and granted, life changes with the ages of the kids and different things like that. Living apart for 5 months, not my cup of tea.
No, I've done that too. I'm like, oh, that's so hard. And there are families that, choose to live, apart for a while, and that's gotta be tough no matter what. In terms of your kids' ages right now, they're in high school, right? Your sons are playing football. You are a college athlete, and obviously he coaches as well, Power 5 level. What's been your approach to sports? And I know there's expectations instantly as soon as your kids enter a team. How have you walked through some of that?
I usually don't say a whole lot when we're at the games. I use my iPad to video everything, so that's kind of my excuse. Both my husband and I, we have a respect. Like, your coach is your coach. Like, you need to listen to what they have to say. After the fact, we can break things down and give you advice at home, but we're not going to undermine the coach. Like, that's we're not going to say stuff from the stands. I just observe.
Yeah.
I cheer. It's only positive. I don't want to be that parent. We've all had it, especially as a coach's family. You see it, you hear it. And that's not who I am. I don't want that.
I usually just not say a word. Like, I can't say one thing because I know I'll say something too much. So I end up not saying anything at all. So this business is crazy competitive, as you well know. Has there been a job, and you don't have to name the job, that you thought maybe your husband would get and he thought that he would get, and you kind of were hoping for that and it didn't happen? How do you keep him encouraged during those moments?
He's really good about just being level-headed, but honestly, it all comes back to it's God's plan. God's plan is better than our plan. And we have to keep trusting that whatever happens is supposed to happen, whether it's good or bad. If doors open and opportunities arise, if they're the right opportunity, things will all fall into place.
Exactly right. Okay. Do you have a mentor in this business?
We've been with Kleinmans for years, And if I have questions, if I just need something, or if I'm struggling with whatever might be happening, I usually reach out to Rhonda. There's some other coaches' wives that I've talked to, some other people, but she's kind of my go-to. She has been since day one up at North Dakota State. She kind of took me in, which is great.
And it's been 5 years on this staff, right? So all together, you've had 10, is that what you said?
10 years.
10 years. That is really, really special relationship for them to bring you with them. And then I know that was a big story 5 years ago when they went from FCS to Power 5 and, following a legend and all those things. Really, really neat to see your lives transpire like that. Okay. How do you connect with your players? And I know things have changed a lot in the last couple of years with our players, which I'm going to talk about next. But what do you guys do? I mean, do you cook for them? What's your thing?
Well, we do lots of things, but it really ultimately starts with like the recruiting process. And I like to be in as much as I can on that. It doesn't always work because of kids, but I want to get to know them from the beginning. I want to know their parents. I want to see how they grew up, what their interests are. So meeting them there is great. And then, once they're on the team, once they're here, it's player treats weekly, only if they win the week before. That's a very strict rule, even though sometimes I'm like, but they really did good. It's only if they win. And I do injury treats. I feel terrible when somebody gets hurt, and so I make them special treats as their healing treat. And then we have them over for dinner. We take them out, and just they're part of the family. Whether they feel it or know it, they're my kids, and I love them like my own. I treat them like my own. If they need anything, I will bend over backwards for them.
Those relationships with the players are so very special. And I think that you and I were talking about how we kind of had to adapt in terms of the transfer portal and not necessarily getting them for 4 years like we used to be able to have, that you have such a small amount of time sometimes to have them in your sphere of influence. How have you seen NIL and the transfer portal, and how have you adapted to all of that?
It's hard. This last year was hard. And again, hindsight, everything works out the way it's supposed to, but the transfer portal almost feels like a breakup. Like, I hate to say it, but I'm like, I mourn a little bit when somebody moves on. And again, sometimes it's for the best. Whatever the reasons it is, it's what needs to be. NIL is a whole nother ballgame like that. Again, there's good in everything, but there's bad in everything. And I still think everything kind of needs to be ironed out a little bit better, but it's so hard that you try to make the most of the relationship. And I dive in. I care so much. And so when people transfer or leave, it's hard. It takes a little bit of an adjustment. And again, hindsight, it's okay. I wish well for everybody and I'll follow their journeys, but you kind of miss it.
Yeah, because they feel like family. And I know my husband, obviously, everyone's always made a conscious effort, but there is even more focus to make sure you're almost recruiting your own roster at all times. So I felt like, and even with some of these windows and stuff, they're doing even more recruiting somehow. And obviously in the windows that they're supposed to, but like, it just feels like more. I feel like they're just year round more so than it used to be. So how do you stay connected when it feels like this is truly year round?
Oh, it is truly year round. And I feel like my husband's on the phone constantly. There's never really a downtime. And so it's just like any other relationship is kind of how I'm working it, is you have to work at it and understand that it's not gonna always go the way we want it. And I'm gonna love who is ever here for however long they're here. And I'm gonna take care of them and wish them well wherever they go.
Okay, so do you get any downtime? What do you enjoy doing?
Downtime is like non-existent, but I love to work out. I mean, that's kind of my background, my passion, but I love to be outside. I love outdoors. And I mean, for me, downtime is just, it's doing the mundane chores like mowing the lawn, or, if something needs to be fixed around the house, taking care of those things gives me satisfaction. I feel good about it. If I really want to be lazy, I'll sit down and I'll read my book. But I'm not one to sit very often.
Last question for you. What would you say is the most rewarding aspects to you about being a coach's wife?
I think just watching my husband have success, watching him live out his passion. Like, this is what he's meant to do. And it's great to see somebody just follow their dreams. And he set such a great example for our children. I mean, he works hard. He doesn't complain. He stays humble. And that's awesome. I mean, there's perks and different things with the job, but just seeing somebody you love have success in whatever way, shape, and form it comes is pretty great.
It's incredible stuff. Okay, rapid fire. Are you ready?
All right, here we go.
All right. What's the last book you have read?
Oh, goodness. What is it called? It's like 5 Bad Deeds. I had to look on the counter.
There you go. I never do this at a game.
I never sit down.
Oh yeah, because you're a defensive coordinator's wife, right? So
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
standing up the whole time.
Yeah, there's no sitting. It just doesn't work.
If you could have dinner with someone other than a family member, current or from history, who will you go on dinner with?
Oh, you know what? Right now, I'd have to say Dolly Parton.
That would be fun. You get a night alone. What show are you binge watching?
Oh, goodness. Well, a night alone, my kids and family would probably say it'd be like the Hallmark shows. But I'm really into Ted Lasso and Yellowstone right now, and I could just watch them over and over again.
Love Yellowstone. I still don't know when that show's coming back. I
know.
What happened?
I don't know. I need it to come back.
What's your go-to meal to cook?
Oh, easy lasagna. It is filling. My kid right now, my boys are growing, so they eat a ton, and I can have it on the table in less than 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's simple. It's wonderful.
I'm going to have to get this recipe. What sport can you beat your coach in?
Probably the only thing I could beat him in is long distance running.
There you go. Are you into like 5Ks and stuff, or?
He doesn't really do those.
What about you?
He says he's not built to run long distance, and I have to vouch for that. He's good at everything else.
What would be your walk-up song?
Oh, Feel Invincible by Skillet.
Nice. Very good. Thank you so very much for being on the podcast. It's been fun to hear your story.
Thank you so much, Kristen. It's been great talking to you.
This podcast is brought to you by Ruler of Hope. Ruler of Hope is a nonprofit that supports medically fragile children. If you'd like to make a tax-deductible donation, you can use Venmo at Ruler-Hope or online at rulerofhope.org.
For a replay of this episode or previous episodes, visit coacheswifelife.org and follow us on social media at Coaches Wife Life.